Hey guys, Brent Hull, Wednesday design video, looking at a house that wants to be traditional. We're gonna help fix it. Come join me. Okay guys, looking at a traditional house, a new traditional house, okay? And kind of what's wrong with it, how do we fix it? If you look at it, this color version I printed out, maybe it brings a little bit more to life what's happening here. But notice a number of things, and if you've watched my videos, you're probably used to these things, but columns, columns are a big deal. Notice that these look like straight tubes. They also have a Corinthian capital. There's also no entablature. So, Brent Blabbing 101, I'm always talking about straight columns and an entablature. And in this case, this roof comes down and this column is sitting up, right underneath this thing, and it goes down as a straight tube. So if there was an entablature, okay, then what would happen is you would have let's just call that your corona, because the downspout isn't out here, that would be your cyma. Then you have a bed mold gone way back, and then you would have a frieze, and then you'd have an architrave, okay? So, and then the column would sit out here, okay? The column would sit out here, and then the neck of the column would be in line with the beams. So now, look what's happened and look what's changed is instead of the column sitting up right under the roof, it's actually down here. And what that does, it looks like these columns are almost just standing in the air, okay? They don't look like they're engaged. They don't look like they have any function. The decorative piece, maybe it's only function. And so they're just not doing anything. And so certainly what we're doing is we're adding in an entablature here. I've changed the columns to Doric columns just because it's easier. I've also, on this house, I have strengthened this connection here, okay? This porch that runs across. I don't know why it doesn't run across, all the way across. I think it should. It looks like this front varies in width a little bit. This is much deeper than this, and I'm trying to get rid of that. I've got coining here, which is kind of weird that it just kind of shows up. As you can imagine, I don't love the dormers. One, I think they got a big hat. They've got an arch window, why? They've got this big sombrero hat with these big ears that sit out there. It's just kind of ugly. The door is certainly contemporary, certainly something that if this house is built, what you guys say in the 80s maybe, this door was redone 10 years ago, and so it isn't contributing. So, what does this house want to be? It wants to be a traditional Greek Revival Southern house, okay? And it's just not because of all of these different elements. Now, there's a great book, Greek Revival book, and it's a fairly contemporary book. It's the Roger Kennedy book on Greek Revival. And the nice thing about it is that it shows a ton of examples of different Greek Revival houses. I mean, here's that classic form where you have the bit large entablature here. You have these strong columns. Notice that they're in that Greek Revival style. There is no base. And so you got those Greek Doric columns that go down to no base. But you'll notice in all of these examples, this big entablature, this strong entablature. And so here's a hip roof version, which is similar to our house. And so if we were going to do something, right, we're missing the entablature. And so certainly that has to go in there. I'll show you another thing that's interesting here is that these columns, and there's this idea called intercolumnation, that the width between these columns is wider than it is here. And if you look at the Parthenon, you look at some of these other classical buildings, one thing that signals where to go and kind of what to do is the width between the columns. And so in openings of porches like this, you'll see columns spread a little bit. And in this case, they narrow down. Now, because they brought this forward, because they don't have a porch above, it's clear where the entry is here, but I'm going to play with that intercolumnation. And so what I've done is I have basically added a double column, okay, which increases my width here. And if you'll notice, this other side, or if I show you this drawing that I was working on, this column's here. They've got the three columns here, here, and here on the end. Okay, so I've brought this column in one width, and I brought this one in one width, but I've added another column. So I've got a double column which expresses that opening, and then I've strengthened these other pieces here and added an entablature. And so by doing that, I mean, if you look at it maybe this way, kind of the difference between the two sides, kind of how one side communicates more strength and another side is just kind of maybe a weird lake house, right? It's just odd that you got brick below, you got siding above, you got these big panes of glass that don't communicate anything. Look how big that pane of glass is compared to a door. So that window's at least 8 foot wide, maybe 4 feet wide. So it's just the parts and pieces here are confusing and kind of throw you off. And so what I've tried to do, just trying to make a new house traditional, I've added the single windows, large windows in that Greek Revival era. You see these large windows, and I even have these walkout doors. Now these are pretty cool. They're basically a door that opens up. It's a panel door that opens up, so the glass above slides into an opening above, and these are walkout doors. So that's a kind of a traditional historical thing that you see in the Greek Revival era, where the double hungs will actually slide up into the ceiling, the doors open, and it becomes like a big door that you walk through. But I've got these windows going down to the porch. I've got single windows above. I've got a door. I'm playing around with these cross-setted corners. You know, the entries on the Greek Revival house, if we stayed in that vein and looked at this book, are really pretty sexy and fun. You see one here, you've got engaged columns, but look what's happening on this entry with these engaged columns and everything else. We could have a lot of fun with kind of how this kind of comes together and what this looks like. Again, you see these columns kind of paired underneath here. This was something that was seen on the Parthenon, one of the outbuildings on the Parthenon, kind of how it came together. There's again those engaged columns that sit up underneath that lintel that support this opening. And so you're just looking at some good Greek Revival details. And so a book like this gives us good inspiration, you know, high style, low style, things that are going on and kind of how to play around with it. And if we look at this strong entablature here, the strong entablature that goes up, I could have gone with ionic columns. Those are really loud and proud. And so anyway, just great details in this book. And in here, you'll see these cross-setted corners, which I think, and look at that opening with that really elevated entry with the cross-setted corners. I think that's really fun and a great detail to look at. And so I've added, that's the reason why I've kind of got cross-setted corners over here, just kind of playing with some of those things. And so I can kind of dial up the Greek Revival, I can dial it down. But building up that entablature is really important. Building up this porch, you'll notice that I've lowered the railing on this porch. I mean, that porch railing is at least 42, which is too high. It's iron, so it's not as prominent, but I would probably go back with wood and be looking at historical details. Anyway, I'd be just trying to clean up this house because I think it communicates and can be actually pretty powerful and pretty sexy if we would allow it to be, and if we would take away some of these elements and some of these details. The parts and pieces are throwing you off because these windows are bigger than doors, and that's kind of an odd detail. The dormers aren't helping. The columns as the tubes, the columnization, where the gaps between here are all different, and so trying to even that up. So we're basically trying to take this historic-ish house, right? This house that kind of wants to be a colonial southern house and make it into something. Giving it better details, I think, really helps. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, did we get it? Columns, column sizing, entablature is huge. Windows, window placement, right? Kind of all the basics, blocking and tackling. You guys have heard me talk about it a lot, but there's a house that can really be transformed, I think, beautifully reconstructed, beautifully done, if we just get those details right, if we understand dormers and columns and just those traditions, right? Because that's what you recognize. You know what it wants to be, but it isn't there yet. I think it's better. Let me know what you guys think. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.